When I was starting out, I didn't know much. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't know what job I wanted to have. I didn't even know how I was going to pay the bills. But one thing I was sure of was that I was different than my brother and my sister. I had an elder brother and a younger sister, and looking at them, I knew I could never be like them. I knew I could never excel at math and science like my brother did. I knew I could never have the same kind of physical self-discipline that my sister had and used to become a ballet dancer. Instead, I knew that I had different strengths, different talents. And although I was confused about a whole lot of stuff, I was just sure that the world was going to wait for me until one day I would pop out of school and get to make my unique mark on the world. And I bet you feel that way. I mean, think back to when you were in school. You knew that in school there were certain subjects that you were drawn to, certain subjects that just grabbed your attention and wouldn't let it go, certain classes where time whipped by and before you even knew it, the bell had rung and, although you wouldn't have admitted it, you kind of wanted the class to happen all over again. And if you didn't like school, then maybe there were certain situations you were drawn to, or certain people you wanted to be around, or certain times when you just knew you were at your best. And you wouldn't call those strengths, not yet anyway, but even back then you knew you had something. You knew you had something special. And now you're holding out hope that your life, your work, your job is going to give you a chance to show everyone what that special thing is. And I've studied over the years thousands of successful people, and if you look at the world through their eyes, work can be a great place. It can be a place where you have a chance to be challenged in just the way that you like to be challenged. It can be a place where people recognize you for what you do well and then push you to get better at it. It can be a place where you get to make the kind of difference that only you can make. But I've learned something else. I've learned that only 2 out of 10 people actually get a chance to have a life like that. I've learned that only 2 out of 10 people get to play to their strengths at work most of the time. Now, the most successful people do, but only 2 out of 10 people get to experience that success. And the needle isn't moving. I do hundreds of these speeches every year to executives, and I tell them a message, I tell them how to figure out their strengths and put them to work, and they hear it, and they believe it, and they want to do it, but it's almost like they're too far down the road to do anything about it. They've got mortgages to pay, and they've got bills to think about, and they've got a growing family, and they've got a career, and they've got promotions, and it's almost like life has pushed them too far down the road now they don't feel like they can make a choice. Well, you'll find that. You'll find that life gets really heavy really quickly, and the longer you wait, the heavier it gets, and if you're not really careful, you're going to wind up living some second-rate version of somebody else's life. You're going to wind up in a job where you're not engaged. A job where you're just marking time, where you're just putting in the hours until the weekend comes around. A job where you're not engaged and excited, but a job where you're bored, where you're drained, where you're burned out, where you're trapped. And when that happens, you can blame someone else. You can blame your teachers or your parents or your boss or fate. You can blame someone else, but the responsibility doesn't lie there. It lies with you. It lies with what you choose to do. So the question you got to get your head around right now, is how do you avoid that future? How do you avoid becoming one of the 8 out of 10 that don't play to their strengths? How do you get to build the kind of life where you are playing to your strengths in life most of the time? How do you build that life? How do you build that kind of success? What do you need to know? And what do you need to do before it's too late? Well, here are 3 myths that are going to hold you back. Now, other people are going to tell them that they're true, but they're not. You need to expose them for myths. You need to blow them up, figure out what's true, and then stencil it to your forehead, and don't let anyone ever tell you different. Here's the first myth, and everyone believes this one's true. The myth that as you grow older, your personality changes. It's not true. Here's what's true. As you grow older, you become more and more and more of who you already are. If you're really good at making friends now, you'll be even better at it in 20 years from now. If you're a neat freak now, then you're going to be a neater freak when you're 40. If you're an idea man now, you're going to be an idea man for the rest of your life. I have a son, Jackson. Jack's 6 years old, and already I know some stuff about Jack. I know this is a kid that craves structure. This is the kid that won't close the refrigerator door unless the ketchup's turned so the label's facing out. This is the kid where as I'm walking down a corridor in an airport pushing a cart, and I say to him, "Hey, Jack, jump on the cart, I'll push you around, it'll be great fun." This is the kid who very solemnly points to the little picture of the kid with the big red X through it, says, no way, it's against the rules. This is also a kid who's massively competitive. I don't mean in a way that all 6-year-olds prefer winning to losing. I mean in a way that when he is seized by it, he doesn't quite know what to do with himself. It's like a physical force. He's watching his favorite football team on TV and they start to lose, and he starts to squirm and twist in his chair, and after a while he just gets so angst up about it he has to jump up and bury his head in the cushions next door. Jack isn't going to grow out of it. He's going to have that same craving to win from 8 to 88. His dreams will change, his skills will change, his values will change, his beliefs will change, but the core of him, the strongest parts of his personality are going to remain the same, and so will yours. And that's okay. But of course what that means is that you need to get really good at describing what your strengths are. If your strengths don't change much during the course of your life, you need to become really specific at describing what they are. And most of us, frankly, are just terrible at that. You ask people in job interviews, what are your strengths? And people dance around and around that question and end up with vague, bland answers like, I'm good with people. I like making things happen. I'm a numbers guy. Well, no one's going to be impressed with that. If you're going to really push your time toward your strengths in life or in work, you've got to get much more specific than that. Now, you've been raised to believe that your strengths are what you're good at and your weaknesses are what you're bad at. But that's not true, is it really? Come on, think about it. You've got some stuff that you're good at that you hate. I mean, you're good at it, so people ask you to do it. In fact, they rely on you to do it, and maybe they've even pigeonholed you into doing it. But if you never had to do it again, it'd be too soon. What would you call that? I mean, I once had a friend who was a brilliant swimmer. At the age of 7, a lifeguard had seen him swimming in the sea, freestyle, told his parents had put him on a swim team, and all the way through school, he practiced and practiced. He did lap upon lap, swimming in the mornings, last thing at night, and he got on the swim team and he won meet after meet, broke record after record, and he hated it. In fact, he hated swim meets so much, he'd get crushing migraines before every one. What do you call that? What do you call that when nature's blessed you with a ton of ability and given you no appetite at all? Where you're brilliant at something and it bores you to tears. What do you call that? Well, you call that a weakness. A weakness is any activity that leaves you weaker after you've done it. Doesn't matter how good you are at it. If it leaves you weaker after you've done it, it's a weakness. And of course, a strength is the opposite. A strength, your strengths, are those activities that leave you feeling strong. Those things that you do that make you feel strong. You need to pay incredibly close attention to how you feel before, during, and after an activity, because your feelings will give you a clue to what your strengths are. If before you do an activity, you actually find yourself looking forward to it, it's a strength. If while you're doing it, you find that you're in the zone, time flies by, you can totally concentrate, it's a strength. If after you're done with it, you feel fulfilled, it's a strength. Not fulfilled as in, thank goodness that's over, but fulfilled as in jazzed or jacked up. That's a strength. Now, to discover what your strengths are then, you don't need someone to tell you what they are. You don't need to take a test. You can find out what your strengths are in a regular week of life. Here's what you should do. Just try this. Take a pad around with you for a week, and anytime you find yourself actually looking forward to doing something, doesn't matter what it is, anytime you find yourself actually looking forward to doing something, scribble it down. Anytime when you're doing something, you find yourself just really in the zone, stop for a minute, scribble it down. Anytime when you're done with something, you feel jacked up and enthused, scribble it down. Don't wait until the end of the day. Don't wait until the end of the week and try and recreate it. You'll end up being way too vague. Do it in the moment. And don't write stuff down that other people are doing to you. Don't write down, I felt strong when my manager praised me. That's the manager doing it to you. Write down stuff you're doing. Don't judge it, just write it down. Verbs, stuff you're doing. I felt strong when I helped my mom understand that point I was trying to make. I felt strong when I cleaned up my room. I felt strong when I was retiling the bathroom. It doesn't really matter what it was. Just write it down. If you feel strong before, during, and after it, scribble it down. And then at the end of the week, what you'll find is you'll have a long list of activities. Well, scan that list and pick the 3 that really leap out at you. Those are your strengths. And then when people ask you about your strengths in job interviews or in the work situation, or when you're trying to think about what you're going to do with your life, look at those 3 activities, talk about those 3 activities. Use phrases like, I'm at my best when, or I feel strong when, and then describe exactly what you wrote down. Be specific, be vivid. Now, other people are going to try and tell you that they know your strengths better than you do. Your parents, your teachers, your managers, but they don't. They may know how to judge your performance better than you, but you know better than anyone else what intrigues you and what doesn't, what you're really interested in and what bores you, what strengthens you and what weakens you. You know that better than anyone else, and those are your true strengths. So learn how to describe them, own them, because those strengths are going to be what drives your performance. Now, the second myth that people are going to try and drag you off course with, and gosh, everyone believes this one, is they'll tell you, look, if you want to grow, if you want to get ahead in life, if you want to get promoted, you can't rely on your strengths. In fact, you've got to figure out what you're not good at and really work at getting better at it. And this starts really early in school, doesn't it? You came back home with 2 A's, a C, and an F, and everyone, your parents, your teachers, they focused on the F, didn't they? You were really good at English and bad at maths, and you got remedial maths. And this continues at work. It will. You'll go to your first performance review, and it'll be 2 minutes on what you did well, and then they'll really drill down into what you need to work on. And what you'll need to work on are your weaknesses. If you're not careful, your whole career is going to be one long remedial math class. Now, the point here isn't that you can ignore your weaknesses at work. You can't do that any more than you can ignore the F in school. The point is that you shouldn't be working on your weaknesses. You're not going to grow most in the areas where you're weakest. You should be working on your strengths. That's one of the truths that's so important for you to remember. You're going to grow most, learn the most, develop the most, be challenged the most, bounce back fastest when you're working on your strengths. If you want to know a truth, know this one. Always be working on your strengths. If you want to succeed in life, you've got to deliberately push your time toward where you have some unfair advantage over everybody else. That means each week, you ought to have a strong, weak plan. Each week, you got to have a strong, weak plan. That's not complicated. That just means that each week, you're going to have 2 things, just 2 things you're going to do each week to push your time toward your strengths and away from your weaknesses. Just 2 things you're going to do every week for the rest of your life. Think about the most successful people you know. Just for a minute, just think about the most effective people you know. Just get them in mind. Just visualize them. Don't they seem to spend an awful lot of time doing activities that really jazz them, that energize them? And you look at them and you go, you lucky devil. You lucky devil. How'd you find a job like that? How'd you find a life like that? How'd you find a job that fit you so perfectly? But of course, they didn't find it, did they? They built it. Each week, every week, they deliberately pushed their time toward those things that energized them and away from those that didn't. Each week, they pushed and pushed until gradually they tilted the floor until the best of their job became most of their job. Well, you should do the same. Each week, volunteer your strengths to your team in some way. Each week, show your team how your strengths can help the team achieve its goals. Each week, deliberately learn some new skill, some new technique, some new trick that will help you put your strengths to work. And then slowly, gradually, each week, you'll rewrite your job description under your boss's nose, and he'll or she'll love you for it. Because then you'll win. Now, some people will tell you not to do that. They'll say, look, the team needs more from you than just playing to your strengths. You can't just play to your strengths, they'll say. The team needs you to put your strengths aside and do whatever it takes to help the team. There's no I in team, they'll tell you. They're wrong. That's actually the last myth that might be holding you back. The myth that the best teams have a bunch of well-rounded people all playing every role equally well. Well, they aren't like that, are they? You look at the best teams. You think about the best teams. They're not made up of a bunch of people all playing every role. They're made up of a bunch of people who have figured out what their strengths are, and then they've surrounded themselves with people who are strong where they're weak. So the team has become well-rounded precisely because each individual in it isn't. Well, if you want to become a great team player, you've got to do the same. You've got to partner with people who are strong where you're weak. The point of being a great team player is not to put up with all the stuff that weakens you. The point of being a great team player is to partner up with people who are different from you. What we, your teammates, what we need from you is we need to know, where are your shoulders broadest? Where can we rely on you the most? When the pressure's really on, where can we count on you the most? When the pressure's really on, what plays can you run? And you need to know the same from us so that we can partner up and get stronger together. Now, to be that kind of team player, the kind of person who knows their strengths, knows their weaknesses, and can stand up for both, that takes a lot of courage. That takes a lot of honesty. Warren Buffett, second richest man in the world, he knows a fair bit about that kind of honesty, that kind of courage. Recently, he did something really strange, didn't he? He gave away $31 billion to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And he held a press conference to try and explain why he would do such a thing, where somebody said, hey, why'd you give all your money to somebody else's charity? And he gave two answers, one of them predictable, the other one just odd. The predictable one was this. He said, I gave it to the Gates Foundation because they can give it away better than I can. They are better than me, so I'll give it to them. They'll give the money away better than me. Typical, practical, Buffett-like answer. And if he'd have left it at that, we'd have chalked it up to just another example of Warren Buffett being smarter and wiser and humbler than the rest of us. But he didn't leave it at that. He couldn't. In the Buffett equivalent of Jack jumping up from the sofa, he couldn't help himself. He went on and he said, besides, charity's no fun for me. Who says that? I mean, some of us may occasionally think that, but who says charity's no fun for me? Imagine the kind of courage and self-assurance it takes to stand up in front of the world and go, you know what? That's not me. In work, that would be like you saying, you know what? I don't want to be a manager. I don't like being responsible for other people's work. When everyone's telling you that to get ahead, you should want that you should want that job, that you should want to be promoted, it takes a strong person to be able to stand up and go, you know what? That's just not me. Now, when Warren Buffett said that, he wasn't trying to hand off all the rotten jobs off to somebody else. He wasn't saying that charity is stupid work. He wasn't disrespecting the goals of charity. He was saying something much wiser, much smarter, wasn't he? He was saying, look, I so respect the goals of charity, they can't be entrusted to a guy like me. Well, if you're going to be a great team player, you've got to have that kind of courage. You've got to have that kind of honesty. You've got to be able to take a stand for your strengths and then fess up to your weaknesses. And then surround yourself with people who are strengthened by the very things that weaken you. Then, and only then, are you going to achieve the kind of success that you always knew you could achieve. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be easy. It's not going to be easy to stay on your strengths path. Not least because other people, well-meaning people like your manager or your parents or whoever, are going to try and drag you off it. You'll go back, you'll use your strengths, you'll be successful, and then people will offer you a bigger job, a better job, with more money, a nicer desk, a better view. And some of those jobs you should take, but some of them you shouldn't, because they don't allow you to play to your strengths. And if you're not really careful, you're going to wind up over-promoted in a job that you shouldn't have. Well, the only person who has to stay clear-headed enough to figure out which doors to march through and which doors to slam shut is you. And I'm not saying this journey is without risk either. The whole strengths journey that you should be on for your life, there's risk to that. There's risk that one day you're going to go back and go all out with all of your strengths and not win. Like my son Jack will take all of his competitiveness, just really go all out with it and not outperform a competitor. That's a bitter pill to swallow, that is. Or maybe there's a risk that you'll go back and you'll say to your manager, I'm weakened by confrontation. And she'll go, like I care. You're trying to just hand off all the rotten stuff off to some other person. So yeah, there's risk that you'll be misunderstood. But a writer, Anais Nin, had a great line on risk. She said this, she said, and the day came when the risk it took to remain all tight in the bud became greater than the risk it took to blossom. There's risks to blossoming. There's risks to betting your life, your career, your success, your satisfaction on your strengths. But you know that from this day forward, the risks of not doing so are far greater. Because here's what I know. One, I know you have strengths. Whatever you think about in terms of your strengths and weaknesses, there are certain activities that make you feel strong. You have strengths. Two, I know that no one's got quite the same configuration, quite the same pattern of strengths and weaknesses as you do. The least interesting thing about you is your race, your sex, your age, your nationality. All the really interesting, unique things about you are beneath the surface, and no one's got quite the same strengths and weaknesses as you. Third, I believe that you'll be your most creative, most effective, most productive, most resilient when you figure out how to play to your strengths most of the time. And last, I believe that everyone will win when you do. You'll win, your company will win, your friends will win, your family will win, the world will win, everyone will win when you do. That's what I believe. But it doesn't matter what I believe. In the end, it matters only what you believe. So let tomorrow be a different day than today was. Let tomorrow be a stronger day than today was. By which I simply mean let tomorrow begin with you looking in the mirror and saying to yourself, what are my strengths and how can I contribute them today? And then let every day after that start the same way. Because you've always known what your strengths are. You've always known what was inside of you. So trust them, be proud of them, and go out and make your mark.